Welcome to Choose Courage Inc., where we skip the boring intros and jump straight into reimagining business and workplace experiences with We Ain't Afraid to Go There conversations. And I want to welcome you to the first episode of our In Between miniseries. And this is a look at the messy, quiet, and often invisible moments that shape entrepreneurs far more than the highlight reels ever could. We explore the difference between intuition that guides and intuition that sabotages and how to tell the difference. We'll talk about the ways that perfectionism pretends to be prudence and how fear often wears the mask of responsibility. And we'll get practical too. We'll share tools and rituals that we use to slow down and filter emotional decisions, including time, mentorship, prayer, laughter, and then some. And then last but not least, we'll talk about how to stop outsourcing confidence and begin building trust with yourself again. So whether you're in the thick of a tough decision or simply needing a reminder that you're not alone on this journey, this episode's for you. Let's get it. So welcome back to another episode of Choose Courage Inc. And honestly, I'm just a little giddy over here about this conversation that I'm about to have with my really good friend. And this conversation is the first of four in a mini series that we're calling In Between. We want to just create space for stories that live in the spaces that no one claps for. So when we're thinking about this mini series, I see it as an opportunity to explore the quiet, the messy, and really the often invisible moments of doubt, depression, and personal reckoning that often shapes entrepreneurs far more than their highlight reels ever could or their LinkedIn posts ever could. So for this first episode in our mini series, we're calling it Is It Your Intuition or Just Anxiety? And really, we're going to be grappling around the question of how do you discern between inner wisdom and emotional sabotage in business decisions? And, this is one of those questions that gets right to the heart of what trips us up, not just in business, but in life. Because anxiety is clever. It doesn't come at you waving red flags like, hey, I'm here. I'm here to sabotage your dreams. Anxiety often slips in sounding wise. It sounds like that calm, that rational voice in your head that says, oh, I'm just trying to protect you. So I'm just excited to dive into this. And maybe Vincent, I'm just kind of curious, even as I was just kind of going on my little rant there, what was coming up for you? And what are some things that, is on your mind?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that came to me was the deception of wisdom,
Hmm.
right? And the mask that anxiety plays as it relates to trying to be wise and take on that persona, and how it can be very easy to trip over deciphering between the two. Is it wisdom or is it anxiety? And sometimes it's a little bit more clear than others. And yeah, that's for me is something that immediately came to mind as you were sharing the intro with everyone. And I'm excited as well to get into it and to talk more about this because I think it's an important topic. It's something that is worth speaking on, and it's something that I think is worth listening to as well.
Yeah. All right, well then let's dive in. Maybe you can kick us off. What are maybe some of the lies that anxiety tells you that can sound deceptively like wisdom?
Yeah. So I want to jump back and actually put this into two categories. Let's say
Hmm.
there is the category of preparedness and then the category of time. And I think what happens in these two categories is essentially the story that is being told around, you know, this area of wisdom, what sounds wise as it relates to whether or not you're ready for something and whether or not you have the time to do something or for something. So more
Hmm.
specifically, example, as it relates to preparedness, right? A lie that anxiety could tell you specifically around whether or not you're ready is that it sounds something like you need to know more before you act, right? And it sounds wise, right? But it's actually avoidance, right? Because real growth happens in motion, not in stagnation, not in standing still. It's not in the waiting rooms of endless preparation. And I'm guilty of that, right? Of thinking that I need to read more books. I need to read more, watch more videos before I could do a thing. And you could actually spend forever doing
Yeah,
that.
forever, ever, and never, ever.
Right. You know, especially if you're a student of life, you know what I mean? That's gonna always be a factor. Another lie that anxiety tells you that may sound wise is that if you're not 100% ready, then you'll fail,
Mm,
right? And so this lie keeps you stuck in sort of the polishing of the plan instead of taking that just first step, right? That first baby step, that first sending that email, that first, podcast, or that just first image on Instagram or LinkedIn, right? And the reality is that nobody starts at 100%. Confidence comes after courage. So you gotta just take that step. You're never gonna be 100% ready.
well, I'll
And
also if
yeah,
I could jump in, I'll also
yeah,
say, like, the lie in that as well is thinking that ready is a destination when ready is a decision.
absolutely.
And I think that's what trips people up the most is they're waiting to get to that point B
Hmm.
being ready, and they're wondering why it's not coming.
Yeah, yeah. That's 100% true. I think another lie that is worth sharing has to do with this particular statement. Someone else out there is more qualified. So why even try? Why even
Mm,
try? And comparison masquerading as logic is not wisdom. That's anxiety because no one has your exact lived experience, perspective, or even drive,
mhm,
right? And that matters more than credentials. I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in the titles, in the past accomplishments, and forget that what sets you apart is actually you.
mhm.
It's your blueprint. And so it's hard to really do a one-to-one comparison on who someone else is in your field. And I think that is a lie that anxiety tells you is that, oh, because, John over here, who's also, a UX designer, is also a small business owner, or is also working in the same field, is so much better that I shouldn't even put my name in the hat. Right.
Mhm, mhm.
Another lie that anxiety tells you. And ultimately, when it comes to preparedness, it tries to operate at a level of protection, and it tells you not to move until the path is lit end to end, right? And as it relates to time, it's very similar to preparedness. One of the lie that anxiety would tell you is that, which I'm sure we both have preferred as we continue to get older and have birthdays show up, is that you're running out of time. That one hits pretty hard because it sounds like it's a motivation, but it's a thief of the presence. It convinces you that rest is laziness, that reflection is delay, and that patience is failure. And I'm a firm believer in being in the moment. And I also appreciate my naps. Naps are a blessing,
Yeah.
you know? And I think the idea of we don't have enough time. So therefore, I can't take a nap. Therefore, I can't take a pause. Therefore, I have to always be on all the time. That's anxiety trying to take you off of the moments that matter the most. It causes you to be distracted by all the noise that can come into your space at any given moment.
Yeah, and anxiety and scarcity are like they're like cousins. They're always there in terms of the question of enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some really good lies of ways that anxiety can sound like wisdom. I
Mhm.
think a couple things that are coming to mind as you're talking where the lie of if I just think this through just a little longer,
Mm.
and because the wisdom that it's trying to masquerade at is being thoughtful.
Mhm.
But what's really happening is I'm tinkering, I'm tweaking, I'm second guessing, and I'm never actually moving. And so
Mhm.
I'm just being stagnant. But I'm labeling it as being thoughtful.
Yeah.
Another lie that comes to mind as well is maybe I should just gather some more opinions first.
Yeah. Ooh.
And this one loves to show up before we make bold decisions a lot, right? Because anxiety can pretend that asking for feedback is smart,
Yeah.
but really all I'm doing is outsourcing my confidence. And I feel like I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs where they're like, "Yeah, I don't know. I just keep kind of guessing, second guessing myself." I'm like, "Okay, well, what are you doing right now?" "Well, I keep, talking to so and so. I've reached out to my friend and I'm like, "Stop talking to people." I was like, "No number of opinions is going to replace your own clarity. And if anything, it can just kind of muddle the vision that you have." So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, you don't need to be gathering more opinions first.
Not at all.
Mm-mm, not at all. Another one that came to mind was, I mean, you covered a lot of them. I'll just say one more before I move us on. Another one that came to mind was that, oh, I'm being irresponsible.
Mm. Mhm.
And anxiety loves to weaponize responsibility. Anxiety, it tells you that making bold moves is reckless, it's irresponsible, and that following your gut is naive. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves, when did playing it safe ever build something meaningful? That's why even vulnerability is important, right? You can't even have relationships, friendship, partners without vulnerability, without playing, if you're playing it safe the whole time, it's just not going to happen. And so true wisdom
Absolutely.
knows that responsibility and risk can coexist. And I know that sounds a little like a paradox, but responsibility and risk can coexist. And usually they have to if you're going to build anything worthwhile.
Yeah. And another just to piggyback off of what you just said, the word that came to mind is fear,
Hmm.
right? When we think about, the risk assessment that we feel that we need to do, oftentimes that's also masquerading behind that F word, that big F word of fear. And I think that that's also a fuel that drives anxiety as it relates to, the lies that it tells, is that it is being propelled by the big F of fear.
Sure, sure. I'm wondering, maybe we're gonna switch gears a little bit because I want to have a conversation about intuition. And
Mhm.
I'm curious, what does your intuition sound like when it's actually sabotaging you? And I want to have a brief conversation about the moments when we've maybe labeled a gut feeling as a red flag, but then regretted doing so later. Curious about what comes to mind for you.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind for me is this statement that often rings true of how I used to operate. And that is, I don't want to burden this person by asking them for help.
Mm,
And the reason why I say that that is, a self sabotage is because the red flag is that you are assuming that the person is too busy or too important. And that can feel considerate, right? But often it's going back to this big F word of fear of being seen as a nuisance. And intuition builds trust and sabotage builds isolation. It keeps you away from the community that you're a part of and members of that community.
yeah, that's good. That's good. When I think about this question, I think about what are the things that I often hear aspiring entrepreneurs bring up, especially when I'm working with them in my group coaching program. And one of the main ones that I often hear is your gut says, "Oh, it's already been done and the market is too crowded."
Mm,
And so then you convince yourself this is your inner wisdom telling you to be strategic.
Mhm.
But what's really happening is what you were talking about earlier, fear of competition,
Mhm.
fear of not standing out. And the truth is, yes, other people have done it, but no one has done it your way, with your voice, with your story, your flavor. And
Mhm.
that's the magic, and I think the secret sauce a lot of us forget. So I'll often tell my entrepreneurs in my cohorts, "Hey, if you're feeling like this, go to the grocery store and go to the water aisle and see how many brands of freaking water we have. Why? Why is there a water aisle with all these brands?" But again, it's about remembering that the secret sauce is you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Another one that comes to mind for me, it taps back into the community and your gut or your intuition may sound something like this, where it will say, I don't think they being people who I want to ask for help that they'll get it. So I'll just do it myself.
Mhm.
And the red flag there is that they're not capable. And this feels like efficiency, but it's often just anxiety posing as competence, which can push you into overfunction. Should I say that again?
Yeah, run that back.
Yeah, let's do it. It this can be oftentimes anxiety posing as competence, and it pushes you to overfunction because you're scared of being disappointed like you have been in the past, or losing a sense of control over the
Mm.
idea and your business.
Ooh. We just end the podcast there. Yeah, there's gosh, the things that masquerade themselves as competence. Do we have
Mm,
time?
mm, a whole nother episode.
Oh, man. Yeah, it makes me think of this other one where it's when your gut says you're not ready. You just need one more course,
Mm,
one more plan, one more book to read.
mhm,
And I think the red flag there is that it feels responsible. It
mhm,
feels like you're being thorough, right? But
mm,
underneath, that's fear of starting messy. And that's an entrepreneurship, that's life, right? Messy. That's self-sabotaging yourself, right? Because that's when perfectionism pretends to be prudence. And that's
mm,
just wild because the clarity that you're seeking can only come once you begin. It's not going to come from listening to some other multi-bajillionaire tell you their story. It's going to be when you start to create your own story and take that first step.
yeah, that's good. That's really good. Another one for me that comes to mind where your intuition can say something like, again, when it comes to working with other people, for me is I've known, this friend of mine for a long time, so I can trust them. And the flag is that you don't want to say no to some possible behavior that you've seen out of not wanting to ruin the relationship because they're willing to help and you feel like you can trust it because of the longevity in which you've known them. And so it's easy to play the avoidance game of having to have difficult conversations with people that you care about, only to create a much bigger problem down the road when what you ignore actually becomes a severe problem that
Mm,
impacts not only the relationship, but your actual business. Right.
mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll add our last one, and it's when your gut says you should probably have it all figured out before you tell anyone. It's that voice that tells you to hide your idea until it's flawless. But that's just fear of being seen in the vulnerable, messy, and beautiful act of building. In other words, it's the fear of being creative.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of us, part of it's from corporate, part of it is depending on what industry you're in, have had our creativity wrung out of us. And so it feels foreign and like a stranger. And so we end up then developing a relationship of fear between us and creativity, when in reality, we need to start developing a relationship of curiosity and openness of what could be. And so when y'all start to hear these voices that me and Vincent were kind of talking about pipe up, the important thing to remember is to not just take it at face value, but maybe to ask yourself these 3 questions.
Mhm,
One is this voice keeping me safe or is it keeping me small?
mhm.
The second question is this true inner knowing or is this my nervous system trying to avoid discomfort at all costs? Which is what Vincent was just saying earlier.
Mhm.
And then the third is what would it feel like to listen beyond the fear to the deeper wisdom beneath it?
Ooh, that's worth repeating. Now you got to repeat that question. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. What would it feel like to listen beyond the fear to the deeper wisdom beneath it? And so I hope this challenges y'all. I hope this asks y'all to maybe stretch because we don't want you to be trapped in a cage of fear. So the next time you kind of feel any of these gut feelings show up, give yourself the gift of pausing and listening deeper and your future self will thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in a similar spirit, as founders, we're being creative, we're often being messy in terms of building on our ideas and the vision, but we can have these moments of getting it wrong and
Mhm.
still having to lead and still having to show up. So, one thing I've been kind of mulling over is this question around how do we keep leading and making decisions after we've made a major one from the wrong place? And how do we then begin to repair that? And so I'm gonna kick us off with like a super brief like story,
Yeah.
and I'll try to make it broad and anonymize it. But I remember a time that I said yes to a partnership, said yes to a client, and it was a big one, shiny on the outside, promising all the right things, but deep down, I knew I was saying yes from the wrong place. I was saying yes because I didn't want to seem difficult. I didn't want to risk looking like I wasn't ambitious enough or collaborative enough. But I just knew that something in my gut felt off about this. And sure enough, a few months in, it was a mess. Misaligned values, poor communication, my energy was drained. I found myself spending more time managing the fallout than doing the work I loved. And that's a tough place to be in. And when it finally hit me, I realized that I didn't choose this from alignment, but I chose this from fear of being seen as a certain way.
Mhm.
Um, and so at this point, I kind of have two choices. I can spiral into self blame or I can get honest, repair, and course correct. And I'll be honest, what matters most to me isn't whether I can avoid those moments. It's, especially as I've grown older, it's how is my ability to repair these moments?
Mm. Yeah. For me, I've had a very similar situation take place. And what I find to be really helpful or what shines or stands out when I think about this question is that the hardest part isn't really the consequence of the action and the decision that I made. The hardest part for me is facing myself afterward.
Ugh, yuck.
That's the hardest part for me because the mind can spiral into so many different directions about what you did see, what you didn't see, why did you, and are you capable? All of the things that
Mm,
wrap around your quality of decision making. And so, because that happens for me, this repair process is really, really important and vital because I want to continue to lead with grace, with intentionality, service. And so to help me get to the point where I can face myself with confidence, one of the things that I do is I pause that spit, that spiral that tends to happen where I doubt the decision. I doubt the fact that I'm capable of continuing to run this business because of the fact that I made this decision and it had this impact on myself and the people that were involved. And so I'll stop the internal narrative of shame, defensiveness, and justification that I made for myself, not because I'm careless, but because I'm human. And so I recognize that or remind myself that I deserve grace
Mm,
in the space because I am human and I know that I will continue to make mistakes. We obviously do not aspire and we do not wake up every day saying, today I'm going to make this number of mistakes because, yes, that is a goal of mine. That is not how we approach the day, right?
yeah.
But the reality is for me, whether I brought the wrong person on a team and there being a misalignment in terms of goals and or vision and or qualifications, etc., that I really do take it as this is a lesson learned that I can grow from and that this does not disqualify me as a leader and as someone who is steering the direction of the team and the company moving forward.
Yeah. I want to take a moment though to speak to folks who are listening to Vincent and they need to just be told directly that you need to learn how to be kinder to yourself. You have to be careful about how you speak to yourself because you're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's as simple as that. It really is. And that
Yeah.
it that's such a powerful statement that you made.
It's
Being
hard
careful
sometimes.
about being careful about how you speak to yourself because you are listening,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
And the the ways in which we oftentimes allow ourselves to speak to ourselves are ways in which we would never allow someone else to speak to ourselves.
Mm. Never.
Never. But we allow it for us because it's what us coming from our mind, and we should have that same measurement and those same standards of what we are willing to accept from others, willing to accept from ourselves when we get into those moments as leaders in making a decision that didn't go according to plan.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I love the earlier point you said about we have to learn how to sit with ourselves
Yeah.
and deal with ourselves. And for me, it's like, y'all, we've had since 2020 to sit with ourselves through the pandemic, through whatever multi-universe we're in right now. And it's time. It's time for us to learn how to do that if you haven't already. But part of the reason why you have to learn how to have a healthy relationship with yourself, to sit with yourself and be honest with yourself, is so that you can then resist the urge to spiral.
Mm,
'Cause that's a temptation, the temptation to beat myself up, to question everything I've ever done, to think, "Well, clearly I'm not enough.
mhm,
What was I thinking?"
mhm,
But that doesn't serve me, that doesn't serve people I'm working with, doesn't serve people I'm trying to help. And so I have to remind myself that a bad decision doesn't mean I'm a bad leader, it just means that I'm a human one. But I have to be able to name it first and then resist that urge to spiral so that I miss the what I heard once someone said, so you miss the blessing in the breaking.
mm, mm.
You don't wanna miss the blessing in the breaking, and we can do that when we spiral.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask you a question.
Oh, man.
In that, because it's such a powerful statement, I think it's worth unpacking a little bit, if you don't
Okay.
mind, where you just mentioned not missing the blessing in the break.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Want to catch that one? Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I don't wanna turn it into a sermon. Yeah, there's blessing in the breaking. I think what I've learned, and I probably learned this the most and probably the darkest season of my life, which was early 2023, where I was truly at a level of rock bottom that I've never been at before.
Mhm.
And what that ended up doing though was a few different things. It made me realize that I can't depend on my own strength. I really do need to ask for help. And so the blessing and the breaking that came from that was finding the strength to actually reach out to friends that cared about me and loved me and allowing them to love on me and having me receive it. Because I was at a position where I had no other option but to receive this love and care from my friends. And so and through that, it's changed my friendship with those people that were who met me in that dark time, because there's a level of trust now and vulnerability and just a deeper understanding of care that I didn't have before that breaking moment. Another blessing that came from the breaking was I realized that there were part of that season, there's a lot happening in that season of life, but part of one thing that came out of that season was recognizing a lot of unhealed and undealt with mother wounds.
Mhm.
And that's why some things that were happening in that season felt so apocalyptic, because there was a level of healing that I thought I hadn't done, but in reality, I had just been busy the whole time.
Wow.
And so the blessing and the breaking was, okay, I need to do this work. Okay, I see why that happened. And doing some deep and incredible work with my therapist, who I love. If I could tip a therapist, I would. Healing is painful, 0 out of 5 stars. It's not fun. But the blessing is I'm in this season of life now where I'm just enjoying the fruit of that work. Actually, you know what's interesting? So I did this personality test in 2019 called the Enneagram. So if you're not familiar with it, Google the Enneagram. But basically, the Enneagram gives you these different archetypes that help you to understand who you are at your core. And then you're usually paired with a number on the left or the right side of it that complements it. So in 2019, I was a 3 wing 2. So I was the achiever. That was like my core of me. And then the 2 is the helper. And so what was interesting was I was talking to a friend last night and I'm talking to him about, oh yeah, I'm a 3 wing 2 because it's from 2019. And so I'm looking up what that is. I'm reading the definition of a 3 wing 2 and I'm like, that doesn't resonate with me as much anymore. I'm not as much as a, yes, let me grind at all costs or let me, make sure that I'm being seen in a certain way. There's a lot of things that go with being a 3 wing 2. And so I retook the Enneagram quiz, it's 180 questions, and I changed. I'm a 2 wing 3 now. At the core, I'm a helper, and I'm not as tied to some of these things that are connected to achievement and success. That's wild.
That's
And
awesome.
so that's the blessing that I'm experiencing now because of the breaking that I had.
That's so good. So good. Thank you for sharing that and breaking that down because I just thought I have a similar experience as it relates to really trying time in my career where I had to do the same thing. I had to be open to the help and the love from friends and people within my circle that I had just met. And
Yeah.
that was also for me a blessing in the breaking because it was not a great time at all. There were so many things that I lost that in retrospect and in hindsight really weren't as valuable as what I gained, which was the type of friendship and support and love that's not one-sided, but is mutual, that is genuine, that really redefined for me what it meant to have true partners in this thing we call life,
Hmm.
from community members that you enjoy spending time with. It really deepened for me what that meant. that I had not had before, or at least I thought I knew what that meant, but that really shifted my perspective in such a way that it allowed for me to even be more open in terms of how I show up and as I was moving forward and moving through this time uh,
Mhm.
with future, colleagues and others in such a way that really I think was the propellant to where I am today. That was one of those huge blessings in that breaking was that exposure to what it meant to be open to receiving the support and help from people who care and
Mhm.
allowing myself to really embrace what was exposed in the breaking
Mm.
about myself. So
Mhm.
yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. Hey, this is Vivian, and I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. And I just wanted to pause for a quick moment to say that this podcast is ad free on purpose. And we want to keep it that way so that it feels like a space that's just for us and just a little bit more divorced from noise on what we should buy and what we should consume. And so the best way to help us do that is by sharing it with someone you think would really connect with it, someone who you think would feel encouraged or get something out of this episode, or by leaving an honest review because it helps more folks find us. And honestly, it could be the exact thing someone else needed to hear today, just because you took a moment to spread the word. So thanks for being here. I appreciate you, and let's get back to it. Yeah, it's, something that just came up for me as you were speaking is I think a lot of us go through life and see it as something that we need to be healed from. But I actually think that life is the healing experience. And I think when you kind of make that shift, you can sit with yourself in a different way. You can be a little bit more kinder to yourself, more gracious, especially if you're looking back in your past and you're understanding how maybe your upbringing was or how someone treated you and how that impacted you. But we can see life as a healing experience
Mhm.
and not just something that we need to be healed from.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And I think to that end, in those moments, there's a lot of emotional decisions that often need to happen. And I think it's really important. It might be helpful for folks who are listening to maybe hear a little bit about tools and rituals that come to mind for us that we use to help filter kind of these heavier emotional decisions before acting. I'm curious, like what's worked for you? What's in your toolbox?
Yeah, my toolbox, I keep it pretty light, but I use these all the time. For me, what works is time. Time is in my toolbox. And what I mean by that is I use time as a tool where I stop making urgent decisions on an emotional clock.
Mm,
Right? If it feels high stake and personal, I don't move until I've sat with it. Or
mm,
at least a few hours minimum. Right. And I know in this age of constantly going and things moving quickly, that might sound like a stretch, but it's so important because I'd rather create that delay than have to do the repair work again of making an emotional decision on something that is super urgent and high stakes. And time gives me that space for my emotions to settle, for truth to surface. And it really isn't about avoidance. It really is stewardship for me. Right. And I make that known to the people that I have to make that known to in terms of the decisions that need to be made and letting them know this is the tool that I'm going to use now. I need this time to sit with this before I make a decision versus allowing the pressures to force me to come up with a solution and or a decision that I'm not comfortable with.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
another tool, if I may share, is mentors. Mentors is another tool that I leverage. I have a few and they aren't there to tell me what to do. per se. They're there to help me remember who I am,
Hmm.
right? Because that's so important. And the right mentors that you choose reflect your values back to you when your emotions blur them.
Mhm.
And those are people that I seek after whenever I'm looking for mentors because they ask better questions and they don't give easy answers.
Hmm.
You know, mine are they're integral, they're curious, super curious and resilient and they're kind. And those values are important to me. And so leveraging mentors who are not quick to give me answers just simply because of their experience or, you know, their capacity or, you know, their resume, but really being interested in what is happening and recognizing that I need to see a mirror of who I am that is clear and cleaned, right? Is an important part of me being able to navigate that space. And then lastly, another tool that I use is voice memos and just recording myself and saying things out loud. You know, I really don't mind talking to myself. This is something I've been doing ever since I was young. As a latchkey kid, I
Mm.
have some experience of spending some time with myself. And for me, speaking out loud helps me move past the swirl and the spiraling that may happen in my head and give it language, right? And if I can name the real fear or the wound behind this level of urgency, I can lead from that place with a level of intention instead of reaction. Right.
Mm.
And so for me, the truth is that, emotional decisions aren't necessarily bad decisions. It's them being rushed and unfiltered.
Ooh,
Those are
that
the
part.
ones that that can cause some damage.
Can
Eh,
you say that again? That was just
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So for me, emotional decisions aren't necessarily bad in and of itself. It's when it's rushed and unfiltered. Those
Mhm.
are the ones that can cause some damage.
Rushed and
Fil-
unfiltered. Yeah. And I like these tools because these tools are good filters.
Mhm,
Plus one on space. I'm someone who feels very deeply, especially when I'm like angry. I feel very deeply. So
mhm.
I have to sleep on that crap. I have to sleep on that before I can. There's no like couple hours. Like I have to.
Yes.
We'll deal with this tomorrow with fresh eyes and an open heart. Kind of
Yeah,
mentality is what I
yeah,
take.
yeah.
But yeah, when I think about my toolkit, I think about who's in like my inner circle. Who are the people who they just have access to me in ways that other people don't? So, what comes to mind is my 2 best friends. My one best friend of 16, 17 years, we go back. And my other one of 15. So, these 2 people, they've seen me through a lot of life. They know me. They know the ways I can sabotage myself. They know how I can get in my head. So, they help me to not lose myself in some of these decisions and these emotional ones as well. So, when I have some of these decisions, I will reach out to them because they keep me grounded. So, I would say that's in my toolbox. I would say I do have both a therapist and a coach. I've been with my therapist for a minute, and I feel like I'm graduating though. Like now I see her like every like 3 or 4 weeks. And so, yeah, listen, it's a good feeling. I remember in that season of 2023 telling her, I'm like, "I can't wait until don't have to see you every single week." Like, terrible. But yeah, so I have a therapist. She's amazing, specializes in a lot of things, but I think what I appreciate about her the most is she's given me language to speak to myself so that I don't make rushed decisions. She's helped me with tools of how to just like better emotionally regulate myself. So my therapist is great. And then my coach is someone who love her as well. And this is a newer thing. So I've been working with her maybe for a year. And what I appreciate about her is she just helps me to get curious about what's beneath the urgency.
Mhm.
And she reminds me of the goals and visions that I have for myself. Like she cheers me on with that. But she helps me to get curious. and to understand the deeper meaning underneath it. But I think, in regards to this question of toolkits, I think it's a combination of you kind of figuring out what works for you, you know? What works in creating a pause? For Vincent, it might be a few hours. For me, I might need to sleep on that.
Yeah.
What works in creating space between emotion and the action? For some of y'all, I do have a friend who he likes to run like 10 miles a day. That's not me ever,
I
ever.
didn't either at all.
Absolutely not. Thinking about it irritates me. But you gotta figure out like what's good for you and give yourself permission to honor that. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
Using
As it's funny like having this conversation, Vincent, with you because I feel myself yo-yoing a lot from present to past. And I'm wondering, what do you wish someone had told you when you were earlier in your entrepreneurial journey about trusting yourself? Because that's a lot of the undercurrent for some of these tools and these decisions and behaviors that we're asking for folks to consider.
Mm. Yeah. For me, I love this question. And, you know, going back and thinking about when I, was first starting out in my entrepreneurial journey, I wish that someone would have, looked me in the eyes and said to me, trusting yourself isn't reckless. It's a
Mm.
superpower.
Ooh. Oh.
Trusting yourself isn't reckless. It's a superpower.
Amen.
Because early on, I'm young in my journey, young in age, and I second guess my instincts, in a room full of louder voices. Oftentimes I waited for external validation before making a move, or I assumed that, someone older, wealthier, or even more quote unquote experienced knew better than I did.
Mhm.
But again, I wish that I was given a sense of comfort or solace in knowing that my intuition isn't a liability, that it really is a leadership asset, right? That
Mhm.
gut feeling is actually the product of my lived experiences, my values, my vision and context. And no one else sees what I see as clearly as I do because of all of that. And so, you know, trusting yourself doesn't mean that you're closed off to feedback or immune to being wrong. It just means that you stop abandoning yourself in moments of uncertainty.
Ooh.
It it means that you can be grounded and grow at the same time.
Mhm.
And if I'd internalized that earlier, I would have said no sooner to misaligned opportunities,
Mhm.
saved myself from unnecessary detours, chasing other people's definition of success,
Come on.
or the need to prove myself to people that weren't invested in my future and well-being in the first place.
I know that's right.
But, so for someone who's early in their journey, is lean into this and that it's not arrogance to trust yourself. It's alignment,
Hmm.
and you're allowed to lead from that place. But you have to spend time doing the work to know yourself and how you show up in the world in order to do that.
Mhm. That's beautiful. And I imagine a lot of folks who are listening, like, are feeling this because a lot of the environments that we've been in, whether that is your upbringing, especially if you had emotionally unavailable parents and you were like the other parent,
Mm,
or in environments like a lot of our workplaces, we have been taught to and encouraged to see our intuition and our needs and our wants and recognizing that as a liability to be able to serve other people and put other people before us.
mhm.
And so, yeah, that hits. And I hope for folks who are listening, if this is feeling heavy, then I hope you also take this as a sign that you're in the right place to move forward now. You don't have to endure anymore.
That's it.
You don't have to endure anymore. And for some of us, we've been taught to endure since we were very young, but we're older now. We don't have to endure anymore.
Nope.
So good. You know what I wish someone had told me earlier in my entrepreneurial journey about trusting myself? I wish someone had said that trusting yourself doesn't mean you'll always feel confident. It means you'll learn to move even when you're not.
Mm,
Because for a long time, I thought that trusting myself was supposed to feel like certainty.
mm,
Like I'd hit some magical point where I'd know beyond a shadow of a doubt, yes, this is the right move. Yes, I've got this. And yes, I'm ready. And so when I didn't feel that way, when I felt doubt, when I felt fear, when I felt uncertainty, I assumed it meant I wasn't ready or I shouldn't act yet, or I needed to go gather more advice, more credentials, and more proof.
mhm.
But I think what I've learned over time is that trusting yourself isn't about having no doubts. It's about choosing to listen to your own voice, even when the doubt is loud.
Yes.
It's about deciding that I hear the fear, I hear the noise, and I'm still going to move forward.
Yes.
And I wish someone had told me that trusting myself wouldn't always feel peaceful in light of that, right? Because sometimes it would feel messy. Sometimes it would feel like jumping into the unknown and again, building the plane as I'm flying it on the way down.
Right.
And
That
that's
part.
okay. That's a part of it. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
That part.
That
As
part.
it's going down,
As
not
it's
up.
going down, I'm
Down.
building the plane.
That's a very different kind of feeling.
Yes.
You're going up in the plane as you're building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peace but terrible. That's what
Yeah.
that is. But I guess though, in those moments though of the loudness, when anxiety is loud, when doubt is loud, are there any practices, tools, or rituals that have helped you build trust with your intuition?
Yeah. Another one of the ones that sticks out to me that goes along the lines of something I mentioned earlier as far as talking with myself or taking a step back, and it is silence and solitude, just even for a moment, right? I like to sit or sometimes stand in stillness. Like I will actually go out into my backyard and I will just stand there, just looking out.
Hmm.
Nothing. I have no phone with me. No music is playing. It's just me and no distractions. That quiet is where my intuition has room to breathe again.
Hmm.
I'll let the birds and the sound of the trees speak to me, but that's pretty much it, right? Another sort of ritual, if you will, is that I walk with no destination in mind,
Hmm.
right? And so just by me moving my body, to move the energy around is something that is important. No agenda, just presence. Similar to sitting still, but now I'm in motion, right? And the rhythm of the walking really does clear a space for new insight to arrive naturally.
Hmm.
Another for me that's important, and this is something that I do every morning before I even start my day, really, is prayer and devotion.
Mhm.
This is how I root myself. Prayer grounds me, and my daily devotionals remind me that I am not carrying the weight of leadership alone,
Hmm.
that I do not have to carry it all on my shoulders. And that is extremely helpful in preparing me for what the day may bring.
Hmm.
Another is laughter. Laughter for me disarms tension. It brings me back to my body and it softens my grip on perfection. And it reminds me that joy is sacred too, right? whether it's a ridiculous meme or a friend who gets me or just laughing at myself, it is literally a reset for me, right?
Mm,
Something that my aunt told me many years ago that I've shared with other people up around this particular ritual and tool is that she said, "A day without laughter is a day wasted in your life."
mm,
And that to me is powerful because it suggests that even when things are going crazy, the decisions that you made is starting to spiral and all of that, that you can still find a moment to smile, to laugh about something, even if it's for literally a moment.
mm,
And the last of my practices is being intentional or having intentional pauses before decision, right? So I've learned
mm,
again to wait, to let the anxious urgency pass if you can. You know, intuition doesn't panic, it speaks in peace.
mm,
And peace simply can't be rushed.
mm.
You know, so those are my practices, right? You know, the silence, the movement, the prayer, the laughter, and the pause. That is how I come to myself again and again.
I love that. And I love that you mention this this spiritual aspect of healing your relationship with your intuition.
Mm,
It makes me think about, so again, I have a background in therapy, trauma therapy. And what's interesting is that in the American Counseling Code of Ethics, there's this section where it talks about how counselors need to be aware of how they might cause harm. And it talks about physical impairment, mental impairment. But what's interesting is it also talks about spiritual impairment. Now, this is weird. This is not a spiritual, religious, or anything like that kind of institution. And yet they're noting that if someone is experiencing spiritual impairment, then they are more likely to cause harm.
mhm,
That's really interesting.
mm,
And so when I think about what does that mean, especially around like spiritual self care, just gonna take us off a side rant and then I'll bring us back. I think about this writer, Dr. Robin Gobbin, I think is her name. And I remember I really liked how she talked about and described what spiritual self care is. And she basically says spiritual self-care revolves around engaging in activities that turn our attention inward and reconnect us with ourselves.
mm,
And for some of y'all, that is through faith, that's prayer, that being in community with your faith community. For others, it's fly fishing.
mm. Yeah.
So I love that definition. And she also talks about how spiritual self care helps us cultivate a deeper sense of clarity about what matters most to us and what we believe in. That's intuition.
Mm,
She goes on and she talks about how we take care of our spiritual needs by taking time away from the daily grind to get quiet and tune in to our own inner wisdom. That's everything that you were talking about just brought me back to that.
mm.
And so for some of y'all, if you're looking for a sign, this is it to reconnect to whatever that spiritual self-care needs to look like for you. I love those practices. You know, I feel like I'll keep mine brief in that I'll focus on one that I find myself coming back to over and over again. And one of those rituals is that essentially I let myself practice
Mm,
small steps towards building that trust again. So when I'm unsure about a big decision, I'll find the smallest way I can say yes to my intuition without having to leap all at once. So instead of launching the whole project, I might share the idea with one trusted person. Instead of ending a partnership today immediately, because I just cannot stand whatever is happening, I might set a boundary in one conversation. Instead of moving to a new city, right? I might plan a visit. You're seeing the pattern here. What's the small win that you can experience for yourself to teach your nervous system it's okay to trust myself again, and I don't have to protect myself from myself anymore.
Mm,
And so I love the things that you're saying. And again, y'all, these aren't fancy tools. They're accessible. They're everyday practices that can help us create just enough space to hear the quieter and wiser voice underneath the noise. And the more you can practice, the more you can find what works for you, the louder that voice will get.
yeah.
And so, obviously, Vincent, I could chat with you forever. I know we've even recorded and talked for 2 hours once, but
Well,
we'll bring this home. We'll wrap this up. If someone listening is in a deep moment of confusion, maybe they're unsure what to trust, what's one thing you'd want them to hear or hold on to after hearing this?
that they still matter.
Hmm.
And not because of what you've done and not because of what you're figuring out, but just simply because of who you are and who you're becoming.
Hmm.
Right. I want you as you're listening to also hear that your value isn't earned through accomplishment. It's inherent, it's intact. Even right now, as you're in a deep moment of confusion, right? You might be thinking that you don't have the answers, and that's okay. That's a part of this process. Confusion doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that you're in transition.
Hmm.
It means that something deeper is shifting. It means you're becoming, and that process is yours, unrepeatable, unrushed.
Hmm.
So if you don't know what to trust right now with everything that is swirling around in your head and the cloudiness that's happening and the confusion that you're experiencing, trust this is that you're not behind. And despite all of what you're experiencing as far as the confusion, that you're not even lost. You are simply becoming. And that journey, even with all its uncertainty, is still sacred because it's yours and yours alone.
Ooh, I hope someone truly receives that and believes that today. These are the kinds of words that can set people free.
Yeah,
And yeah, so thank you. Thank you for that.
you're welcome.
Yeah, there's two things that are coming up for me. If someone listening is in a moment of deep confusion, unsure what to trust, what's one thing that I would like for them to hear or hold on to? Vincent and I are recording this on my birthday. It's June 30th, baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. And I just again love these conversations. So I'm like, yeah, let's chat. But for me, my birthdays have always been a moment of reflection. I love my birthday. It's right in the middle of the year. And so it's always a good reflection for me. And I think one thing that I've been chewing on that I can relate to this question is if you're finding yourself in this space and you're unsure of what to do next or what to hold on to, one thing to maybe think about is the decision that you could make something that would allow your younger version of yourself to feel safe, affirmed, and encouraged by running to you and experiencing you as an adult now.
Mhm.
I've been reflecting on the past years and I've been thinking about how I'm becoming this woman that my younger self would feel safe with, would feel
Mhm.
affirmed by, would feel encouraged by. I'm becoming the adult that my younger self needed. And I think with these moments, and again, not every moment of confusion will be that deep, but for some of you, there are big decisions to be had. And with whatever decision you make, is it something that is going to help you become more of the adult that your younger self wish they had in their life? So that's one musing. And then the other thing that I would leave folks with is a reminder that you don't have to untangle everything all at once to take your next step. And I know what it feels like to be in that swirl where anxiety, intuition, depression, maybe even old stories, fear, hope, take your pick, and they all kind of sound the same. And you've just been frozen because you're worried about picking the wrong thing. But I think the truth is that, again, and we've said this, I think, earlier in the podcast, that clarity isn't something that shows up before you move. Clarity is what meets you as you move.
Yeah, that's it.
And so instead of trying to figure out the whole path right now, just ask yourself what's one small, kind, and honest next step I can take? Not the perfect step, not the forever step, but just the next one. And let that be enough for today. Just focus on today. Because I promise you this, that your way forward isn't waiting on you to think harder. It's waiting on you to just try. Just try.
That's good. That's really good. And that's
Man.
important to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us and diving into some of these real and unfiltered conversations. We know your time is valuable, and so we don't take it for granted. If today's episode made you think, if it challenged you, or gave you something new to consider, we'd love for you to hit that follow button on whatever streaming service you're using. That way, you'll never miss an episode when we drop them. And if you want to go even deeper, sign up for our newsletter at choosecourageinc.com, and you'll get updates on new episodes, access to exclusive freebies, and first dibs on coaching opportunities and other resources to help you make bold moves in your life and business. So we appreciate you, we see you, and we're rooting for you. Until next time, keep choosing courage over comfort, and a friendly reminder to drink some water.